It was a quiet Thursday evening in late October 2024, the kind of autumn dusk where the golden light dances on the water just right. I was out on my dock at Willow Creek, a small private lake in Ashwood, Tennessee, casting my line like I'd done since I was a kid. My grandfather built this dock back in the 70s, and for decades, it's been my sanctuary, a place where the world's noise fades, and the gentle lap of water against wood soothes the soul. I'd had a brutal day at work, and fishing was the only thing that could untangle my thoughts. The lake was mirror still, reflecting the fiery orange sky. Nothing out of the ordinary, just me, my rod, and the peace of my own property. Then I heard a heavy boots thumping on the wooden planks behind me, deliberate and out of place. I turned to see three men striding down my dock like they owned it. The leader, a tall guy, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, was dressed in a black uniform with some unfamiliar patch stitched on the chest. Behind him was a stockier man, same outfit, and a third guy I'd never seen before, all of them wearing this grim, official air that set my nerves on edge. "Excuse me, sir," the tall one said, his voice dripping with that fake politeness you hear when someone's about to ruin your day. "I'm Victor Kane, head of Creek Security. We're here on official business regarding violations of neighborhood waterway rules." He pointed at my fishing rod like it was a smoking gun. "You need to stop fishing immediately and hand over your equipment for inspection." My skin prickled. Creek Security? Since when did my private lake need security? I glanced past them to the shore, where Ellen Price, the Homeowners Association president, stood watching, arms crossed, with that smug little smile she always wore when she thought she was in control. "Who are you people?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "This is private property. I've got a sign right there, Private Creek. No trespassing, in case you missed it." I pointed to the bold red letters at the dock's entrance. "What's this about neighborhood waterway rules? This creek's mine, not some community pool." Victor reached into his pocket and flashed a badge, some cheap plastic thing with Creek Patrol written in tacky blue letters and a fish logo that looked like a kid drew it. Below that, in tiny print, it said Safe Wave LLC. It was the kind of badge you'd buy at a sporting goods store for $10. The stocky guy, who I later learned was named Carl Dunn, stepped forward and put his hand on my rod, not grabbing it, but close enough to make my blood boil. "We need that equipment, sir," he said in a gravelly voice, like he was playing a tough guy in a low-budget movie. The third guy just stood there, silent, but I could feel the threat in their presence. I wasn't about to let three strangers bully me on my own land. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Hold up, gentlemen. Let's get this on camera. You're saying you've got the authority to take my property while trespassing on my land." I zoomed in on Victor's toy badge and Carl's aggressive stance, then panned to the laminated property deed I keep posted by the dock. "This is my deed, filed with the county, legal as it gets. This entire creek is mine." Victor's eyes flickered when he saw the deed, but he doubled down. "HOA covenants override individual property rights for community standards," he said, though his voice wavered. "The neighborhood voted for stricter waterway rules." I almost laughed at the audacity. HOA rules trumping a legal deed? That's when Ellen marched down, her heels clicking like she was storming a boardroom. "James, we've discussed this," she said, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "Your fishing disrupts our community's aesthetic harmony. Residents have complained about the noise, the mess, the impression it gives to potential buyers." Noise. Mess. I catch and release, leave nothing behind. The creek was pristine, the dock spotless. What impression? I shot back. That someone actually enjoys their own property? Carl stepped closer, close enough that I caught a whiff of stale cigarettes. "We can do this easy or hard, buddy," he said, reaching for my rod again. I noticed a bulge under his jacket, maybe not a weapon, but he wanted me to think it was. The threat was clear: comply or else. I pointed at Victor's badge. "Where'd you get that, Victor?" "Looks like the ones they sell at the bait shop downtown. Same font, same fish logo, even says Made in China on the edge." I held up my phone, capturing the serial number. The three men exchanged glances, and Ellen's smile tightened. "The specifics of our security credentials aren't up for debate," she snapped, flipping through her clipboard like it held the law itself. That's when I knew this wasn't just about fishing. Something bigger was going on, and they were desperate to keep me from figuring it out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Victor's fake badge and Carl's veiled threat kept replaying in my head. By 2 a.m., I gave up and grabbed my drone and camera from the garage. I work in environmental research, so I know evidence hides in plain sight if you know where to look. The night was clear, perfect for aerial surveillance. I heard a grinding, noisy pump, coughing like it was overworked, coming from the community's irrigation system. I followed it, staying on my property, and found a massive intake pipe hidden behind some bushes, sucking water straight from my creek. My drone's infrared camera caught it all, an 8-inch pipe jammed into the spawning grounds, pulling in minnows, fish eggs, and plants. No permits, no protections, just destruction. My grandfather spent years protecting that spot, and now it was being gutted. Worse, I spotted chemical containers under a tarp near the pump, their hazard symbols glinting in the moonlight. These weren't pool cleaners, they were industrial grade, the kind you don't want near a natural waterway. I crouched in the dirt, heart pounding, as Victor's flashlight swept inches from me. He muttered to Carl about draining the creek before James catches on. My camera clicked silently, capturing the pipe, the chemicals, the fresh concrete evidence of a professional setup, not some HOA landscaping project. By dawn, I had photos, videos, and a plan. I called Sarah Holt, a state wildlife officer I'd worked with before. "Sarah, I need someone who gets environmental law, and I need them now," I said, my voice tight. "Can you meet me at my place this morning?" This wasn't just HOA nonsense, Anna Maria, it was a crime. Wednesday's HOA meeting was my chance to turn a private fight into a public reckoning. I arrived early at the Ashwood Community Center, armed with a chart comparing HOA rules to actual law, my laptop loaded with drone footage. Ellen's PowerPoint, titled Community Harmony and Resource Management, was pure theater, accusing me of threatening property values with my fishing. I stood up, holding my deed. "There's no shared ownership of my creek, Ellen. No easement, no HOA clause." The room stirred. Victor and Carl stormed in, fake badges gleaming. But before they could interrupt, Nancy, an older neighbor, held up a printout from the county clerk. "Ellen, why's the HOA paying Safewave LLC when it was dissolved 6 months ago?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ellen's smile faltered. Sarah arrived, badge gleaming, and shut it down. "Impersonating law enforcement is a crime," she said, staring at Victor. "And so is interfering with private property." The room went quiet, neighbors realizing they'd been played. Saturday's kids' fishing event should have been a highlight, teaching kids about conservation, like I'd done for years. But Victor and Carl showed up, whispering to parents that I was unstable and my credentials were questionable. Parents hesitated, pulling kids close. I kept calm, showing a girl named Lily how to release a base safely, explaining ecosystems in a way kids could grasp. Her dad, Tom, an environmental consultant, saw through the lies. "This is real science," he said, checking my permits. A mom live-streamed it all, catching Carl's finger-jabbing outburst. "He's dragging your kids into his trouble." My response was measured, cameras rolling. Accusations without evidence don't help anyone. The crowd shifted, parents rallying around me as Victor's smear campaign crumbled. By Sunday, I was done reacting. I dug into Safewave LLC's records dissolved, a shell company run from a rented mailbox. HOA payments kept flowing to it, signed by Ellen. I showed Nancy the proof, and she slammed her table, furious. "This is theft, James. Organized theft." Neighbors like Tom and the Parkers joined us, sharing their own fake fines, $200 for a mailbox, $150 for excessive irrigation. We tallied $4,000 in fraudulent charges from just 8 households. Water tests confirmed my fears: banned chemicals, algae killers, and herbicides poisoning the creek. This was environmental crime, not lawn care. Sarah's underwater footage showed the intake pipe wrecking spawning grounds, my dyed fish vanishing into the system. We planned our final move at Nancy's house, a coalition of fed-up neighbors. Wednesday, I met Ellen at Lakeside Park, Sarah nearby, inspecting the illegal pump. Ellen spread forged easement papers, but I countered with my deed and Safewave's dissolution records. "How's a dead company enforcing anything?" I asked. Victor lunged for my folder, but Sarah stepped in, badge out. "Impersonation, fraud, environmental crimes," she said, handcuffs ready. Neighbors arrived with boxes of fake fines and photos of chemical dumping. Ellen, Victor, and Carl were arrested conspiracy, forgery, theft. The crowd's phones captured it all, their empire collapsing in real time. The fallout was swift. Federal charges hit Ellen hardest. 18 months in prison, restitution for $60,000 in stolen HOA funds. Victor and Carl got lighter sentences, but were banned from security work. The creek was cleaned, pumps dismantled, spawning grounds restored. New HOA leaders Tom, Nancy, and others rebuilt trust with transparent rules. My property rights were cemented, the creek alive again. Standing on my dock 6 months later, watching kids fish and families laugh, I knew my grandfather would have been proud. The water held the truth, and we brought it to light. What would you do if your neighbors tried to steal your land and poison your water? Would you fight alone or rally your community? Can you ever trust an HOA after something like this? Drop a comment, hit like, or subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Protect your peace, your land, your legacy.